a distance away, but I imagine in just a moment from now more videos will be coming out, because this is how they're coming out in a bit of a trickle. But those are those pictures of the final touchdown of the Rafales at the Ambala Air Force Station. All of these pictures are approved by the Indian Air Force, so please do not worry about us showing anything that we are not supposed to. These are all pictures that have been approved by the Indian Air Force, and in fact are being put out by Indian Defence Minister Rajnath Singh himself. Image on your right is of the final approach of those Rafales. That dot you see in the distance is a Rafale coming in for that final tarmac touchdown at the Ambala Air Force Station. Obviously filmed by someone on the ground there, by the Air Force inside the airbase, not by India Today, so make no mistake about that. Okay, Abhishek Bhalla with us live outside the airbase. Abhishek, beautiful images of those Rafales with their signature growl making that final approach. They've all landed at the Ambala airbase now.
Absolutely stunning images, Shiv, that Anil managed to capture for us in that split moment. And minutes after that, rather seconds after that, the 5 Rafales touched down in the Ambala airbase. And obviously, a grand welcome was awaited for the pilots who flew from Merrianak. In their initial leg, they reached the UAE. There was a halt over there. It was a long journey of about 7 hours flight. Not easy to be in that little cockpit for that long. That's why they needed a proper rest. And earlier today, they flew from the United Arab Emirates, and finally they have touched down upon Ambala. And from here onwards, be it the ground crew or the pilots, they will definitely be looking forward to ensuring that the Rafale is operationally ready and is battle ready in all fronts. And obviously, this has been a moment that the Indian Air Force and the Indian Armed Forces were waiting for. Nearly 2 decades for the Indian Air Force to get a modern aircraft fighter jet of their choice. So it's a big relief and at the same time a very, very important strategic induction for the Indian Air Force for the future.
Absolutely glorious images coming in of one of the Rafales touching down at the Ambala airbase. Beautiful image of that Rafale almost in slow motion. Such a beautiful aerial ballet this Rafale coming in to touchdown at the tarmac in Ambala. This is only one of the 5. They've all landed, of course. So these are images from a short while ago. And this is filmed by the Indian Air Force from inside the base. I'm going to keep quiet for a moment so you can enjoy the audio of this beautiful touchdown, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy these pictures. By all 5 aircraft, of course. And all 5 aircraft have indeed landed at the Ambala airbase. Air Chief Marshal Bhadoria, Chief of the Air Staff, is currently awaiting the pilots. They will be getting out of their aircraft and meeting with the Indian Air Force Chief. There will be more videos, ladies and gentlemen. All of the aircraft have landed one at a time. And all 5 have in fact landed. This is the Ambala Air Force Station. The first pictures from inside the airbase. This image has also been tweeted out just now by Defence Minister Rajnath Singh. Final approach as that Rafale comes into land. Please enjoy these pictures. There will be many more such pictures, but also the importance of this picture, ladies and gentlemen, is that this is the first time that an Indian Air Force Rafale is touching down on Indian soil. This is the homecoming. What you're looking at is an Indian Air Force Rafale. Remember, there have been French Rafales that have visited India for exercises in the past, but this is for the first time that an Indian Air Force Rafale, paid for by India, has touched down, with Indian colors, has touched down on Indian soil. That is the importance of the image that you're looking at. It has taken 20 years for these modern fighters to arrive. It's taken over a decade specifically regarding the Rafale. All the paperwork, all the politics, all the delays, all that comes down to this one image. Because when the moment those wheels touched the tarmac, the Rafale is on Indian soil, it's part of the Indian Air Force, and it has basically come home. It's come home to the base that will call, that this aircraft will call its home, the 17th Squadron. The Golden Arrows is the squadron that has been revived to house the Rafales, and all of the pilots who are piloting these aircraft into Ambala belong to that squadron, the 17th Squadron, called the Golden Arrows. It's a war-decorated squadron which participated in the Kargil operations as well. They used to operate the MiG-21 and now they operate the Rafale. Imagine that's the kind of leap. More images coming in, more images. Let's listen in. You can hear a bit of the wind, but you can also hear a bit of the jet engines, the growl of the jet engines of the Rafale. In those images, you can see them taxiing after they've landed. The image that the aircraft that you've just seen land is a twin-seat, very clearly a twin-seat Rafale, possibly piloted by the squadron commander, Group Captain Harkirat Singh. We don't have a confirmation on that, but there are two twin-seat aircraft that are part of the pack of 5 that have landed in Ambala today. In a moment, we'll also be able to get pictures of the pilots themselves. But yeah, you can see it very clearly. Just as the aircraft is passing the camera, you can see that it is a twin-seat Rafale. Of the 5, 2 of the aircraft were twin seats, 3 of them were single-seaters. 7 pilots bringing those aircraft home. It's possible that Group Captain Harkirat Singh, the commanding officer of the 17th Squadron, was in that aircraft. So all of them are on Indian soil, back on Indian soil. They've spent more than a year in France, so they've returned now to their families, to their unit, to their home base with their warbirds. That's what's happening today. And these are pictures from outside the base where you can see the Rafales taxiing as they make their way to the holding area where the Indian Air Force Chief will be ceremonially welcoming them in just a few short moments from now. Incredible pictures, ladies and gentlemen. These are pictures that are full of meaning, full of symbolism, and make no mistake, it's not just the Indian media. Make no mistake that China and Pakistan are also very closely watching, very closely taking notes, very closely trying to figure out what India's next plan is. But let me also make it very clear that these images send out a message to countries like that. There's nothing secret about these aircraft. These aircraft are there for deterrence and are there for the consumption of India's adversaries. And that's why these pictures are being allowed to be broadcast in Indian media. So let there be no confusion or mistake about why these pictures are being shown. They are not of a classified nature. The Rafales touching down is a culmination point of what has been an extremely difficult acquisition process that has meandered for many, many years, the better part of a decade, more than a decade in fact, and are the first fighters from abroad to enter Indian service since the Sukhoi 30s at the turn of the millennium. I was in college, as a matter of fact, when those aircraft first came, the Sukhoi 30s, and now you're seeing the Rafale come in. It's the next modern fighter from abroad that has been imported into Indian service. Pictures that all of India will be glued to of the Indian Air Force's first Rafales touching down at the Ambala Air Force Station. It's a bit of a foggy day, as you can see. Visibility not very good. Bit of a cloudy day, slightly overcast, a little bit of a mist in the air. It is monsoon season, of course, so that's not something that was unforeseen. But these are all-weather fighters. Remember that. But during a ferry flight, when fighters are being brought home, there are always backup air bases kept. But as you can see, all's well that ends well. The fighters were able to land directly at Ambala without the need to divert to any other air base, which was the backup plan. All the 5 aircraft are currently at Ambala. Today there will of course be a lot of rest for the pilots. They've come in after a long flight from France and then from Al Dhafra in the United Arab Emirates. I'm sure there will be some squadron celebrations later tonight and this evening, but there's no time to waste, because tomorrow work begins afresh. There's no time or no luxury to relax and chill. The new birds are here and they must be Indianized as quickly as possible. And that's a complicated process. The operationalization of the Rafales is going to be a priority area for the Indian Air Force. The Indian Air Force has also already declared that all of these pilots are operationally, fully operational on the aircraft, as well as the weapon systems on board. And be that as it may, it's a complicated process to make these aircraft fully Indianized. And I say Indianized in quotes because India has many peculiarities: weather, terrain, the kinds of missions, the kinds of threats that we face, which are extremely different from every other country. And therefore the Rafale, which is a foreign jet, needs to get its Indian colors in more ways than just the flag painted on its skin. And that is something that Indian pilots, Indian technicians, Indian maintainers, Indian battle planners, Indian mechanics, Indian staff on the ground, Indian engineers will ensure is made possible in the shortest possible time. They do not have the luxury of spending a year or more to make these aircraft fully combat ready. And while these aircraft are theoretically already combat ready, it is going to be a complicated process that must take its time, but it will be done as quickly as possible. Abhishek Bhalla is still with us from outside the Ambala air station. Abhishek, beautiful twin images, one of the Rafales landing, the other of the Rafales taxiing, and these are images from a short while ago, so I imagine that the pilots may have already met the air chief by now. Abhishek, are you hearing anything of that?
Yes, definitely, Shiv. It's been about 10 minutes or even more since the landing has taken place, and obviously a grand welcome was expected, and that's the reason why the Air Force Chief himself had come down to Ambala. And it's a big moment, especially for these pilots who've actually brought the Rafale from Mérignac in France. It was a long journey, and finally they are home, and Rafale has got its new home. A very historic and traditional Air Force base, more than 100 years old. It started operations way back in 1919, when the Royal Air Force of the British was operating out of here. And since then, it has gone through a lot of changes, has seen a lot of action, was attacked by Pakistan in 1965 and in 1971. And the reason for that was this was one of the most important air bases because of its strategic location, and it still remains so. As far as the infrastructure is concerned, it's been upgraded over the last few years, and that's the reason why this air base has been chosen to be the operating base for the Rafale. There are other aircraft like the Jaguars and MiG-21 that also function out of here. So with the Rafale coming in, this becomes even more important. But for the moment,
yes,
it's an extremely proud moment for those fighter pilots, for the entire Indian Air Force that's finally got an aircraft of their choice. It was a long wait, 20 years. It's taken through a lot of negotiations.
Yes.
Of course, we all know the recent political controversies around the procurement of the Rafale. But the reality is that finally it's a touchdown upon Ambala, and very soon it will be part of all important operations, war games, drills, and the pilots and the ground crew will be soon in action with the Rafale.
Absolutely. Very short moment of celebration tonight at the 17th Squadron headquarters in Ambala, and then these birds will have to go through the motions to become operationally ready to meet all of India's many requirements, operational and otherwise. So this is the beginning of the Rafale Raj as far as India is concerned. Our sister channel Aaj Tak says "Aa gaye Rafale," which is trending on social media as well. A wonderful way to put it, "Aa gaye Rafale." That's the pithy way that Aaj Tak has described the arrival of the Rafale jets. In just a short while from now, I'm learning from my sources that we will get some images of the Indian Air Force chief getting introductions with the pilots and then meeting and greeting with the arriving crew.